What is cracking, everybody? You're back with Mr. Berger, and tonight we're going to be taking a look at Pompeyo's P.E.K.K.A balloon deck that he is running right now, or at least has been running recently. Now guys, I've been really excited and psyched to show you this deck. It took me a while, because I'll be completely honest with you, I'm pretty bad at it. I tried it for a while, it for a long time, because I was like, dude, this is such a strong, awesome deck. And I just couldn't quite get the hang of it. It definitely took more practice for me personally to get the hang of than some other decks, a lot of other decks that I've showcased in the past. Now, that being said, it is an extremely strong deck. So this deck was founded by Pompeyo, and he's, you know, renowned for being one of the best players in the world. Definitely has a reputation and has the stats and everything to back it up. And in fact, he got to 8th place in the world with this deck recently. Now, he dropped since then, but that's kind of how it goes. You know, you fluctuate, you go up and down, especially when you're in those really high competitive ranks. So either way, he was definitely able to do really well with this deck, so it's proven to do well if you can, you know, play it correctly. So really quickly, guys, I want to talk about some minor replacements for the minor and the other legendaries. So let's start with the minor, since I mentioned him. A replacement for the minor would probably be the Ice Golem, but if you did that, you probably want poison for arrows, because the thing is, the minor, he has a specific role in this deck, and that's to make sure that you have something to poison, or excuse me, to punish those pumps. Poison being the alternative option there to punish those pumps. And I honestly feel like poison would work out in this deck really well in the place of arrows, even if you kept minor in there. That, you know, makes it a slightly more expensive deck, but regardless, that minor poison combo, as you know, is always really deadly. It would be good to have it in this deck. But he ran this deck with arrows, so I went ahead and tried it with the classic Pompeyo version. Now, for the Inferno Dragon, you could probably do Mega Minion just because it's a cheaper alternative. It's air, it does a lot of damage, it's a tank killer or a support killer, so you could definitely do that. You might want to run Inferno Tower, but the reason that I was told that you don't want to do that with this deck is because then it makes it even more expensive. The Inferno Dragon only costing 4, the Tower costing 5 would definitely make it a more expensive deck overall, and might kind of alter the playstyle to a point where it's not as effective. Now, lastly, just this isn't a legendary replacement, but if you want to try Snowball for arrows, you could totally do that too. I think I would try that out, honestly, make it even cheaper. And the Snowball was just recently released, and it's got huge potential. I'm really excited to see that card come into play and kind of find its way into all these different decks. So that's it as far as legendary replacements go. You can always make minor tweaks here and there. If you take out the P.E.K.K.A or the balloon out of this deck, that's changing your major win conditions, so I wouldn't recommend that, but hey, who knows, you might want to do that anyway. Now for the minions, I'm sure you could definitely be flexible with that spot. You could probably throw in like bats or you know, Goblin Gang or Spear Goblins or Archers or something in there. I think Archers would be a good replacement. But having the minions and the balloon and the Inferno Dragon gives you a lot of air, which makes this an air-heavy deck, which can totally play to your advantage, you know. If they only have a counter for, like one solid counter for air units, you can bait that counter out with like your Inferno Dragon and then safely put in a balloon with minions in the back to support it, or, you know, whatever the deck or the situation calls for. Alright guys, let's talk about the 2 tank killers that we have in this deck. We got the Inferno Dragon and we have the P.E.K.K.A. So both of these things absolutely wreck tanks. The reason for that is because there's a lot of Golems in the meta right now, at least around the time this video is being recorded and released. Maybe by the time you're watching it, it will have changed. But at this time, there's definitely like Golems in the meta. So you kind of want to have those tank killers to make sure that you can just decimate those Golem decks, and there's no chance that they have an opportunity to do anything at all. So you got, again, Inferno Dragon, and you got the P.E.K.K.A. So use them properly, don't just waste them, use them to take out those tanks. Now this is definitely very much a control deck. As you can see, we've got a lot of kind of defensive counter push cards, so you definitely play it like a control deck. So save that P.E.K.K.A. usually kind of to go for heavy defense, providing it then a counter push, or allowing it then to provide a counter push for you. And, you know, kind of it goes on to offense, and just on top of being that defensive powerhouse, then plays a very powerful threat on offense. So let's talk a little bit more about this deck. Let's see, what else do I want to mention about this deck? Now, we do have these 2 strong tank killers, but we've also got a really heavy offensive win condition, and that's the balloon. As we can see, I'm probably going to place it right here, because I see it in my hand. Yeah. Now, the balloon placement in this deck is really important, like the timing and everything for it. You don't want to just waste it willy-nilly. You want to use it when you see an opportune time to do so. So oftentimes you'll actually end up saving it for double elixir. You know, they might have a really solid air counter consistently and always be able to take out your balloon every time you cycle through it. But in double elixir, you're able to build up more of a snowball with, you know, putting the P.E.K.K.A kind of in the back and going for a big beatdown push. And then you can put the balloon on top of that with the P.E.K.K.A tanking, and it just is absolutely devastating. It can absolutely destroy a tower. So you could consider using the balloon, saving it for double elixir. Otherwise, hang on to it for when they have no air counters. Again, like I said earlier, if they waste their air counter on like your minions or your Inferno Dragon, then you can place your balloon much more safely and allow it much more safe passage and a much more high chance to connect with the tower. And remember, just one hit from the balloon does an insane amount of damage. 2 or 3 hits will just destroy a tower. Alright. It is a bit risky to play it off early, but it can pay off because it has that chance to get in there, and as I just mentioned, just that one shot from the balloon does so much damage. But if they counter it, it's just 5 elixir absolutely wasted. It's just gone for essentially nothing. I mean, if it gets close enough to the tower, the death damage will chip away at the tower, and they made the death damage relatively significant, but it's not nearly as much as the threat that it provides with its regular auto attack. It just does an insane amount of damage to the towers. Alright guys, next thing that I would like to talk about is potential opening moves. Now, one thing that you don't want to do is open with your miner, because you want to save it as kind of your pump killer. So you want to wait to see if they have a pump in the deck, and then you use your miner on that. And you know what? Honestly, in some of these replays, I probably did not do that. I probably made that dumb, silly mistake of wasting the miner early. But either way, keep that in mind, alright? Don't do the same mistake that I do, just because I did it. Learn from me. Learn from me making the mistake, and don't do the same thing. Sometimes it feels like you don't have anything else to place in your deck. So what you could do is cycle out your cheap cards. What comes to mind for me is the Royal Ghost and the minions, because those only cost 3 elixir. The miner also only costs 3, but again, you want to save them to counter like pumps and princesses and stuff. You could cycle the Inferno Dragon also, and that's 4 cards right there. If you absolutely have to, you can hang on to the elixir, wait till they play something, and then try to counter with P.E.K.K.A, or even P.E.K.K.A all the way in the back. But remember, if you P.E.K.K.A all the way in the back, you just invested 7 elixir, and that gives them the opportunity to do something silly like E-Barb Rage the opposite lane, and then you have no elixir to counter it. Right? So don't make that mistake. Usually you want to open with one of your cycle cards in the back, or kind of play defense, wait to see what they play, and then counter accordingly. See what I just did there? I used the P.E.K.K.A on the right, he uses the Goblin Gang aggressively in the left. Of course, I'm able to counter it with the Zap, but now, you know, I wasted my Zap on that, and I have less elixir to counter what he's going to send in. He probably could have punished harder there, but chose not to. Anyway, let's get back to what I was talking about here. So if you have poison, you probably don't want to open with that either. You want to save it for your pump, because remember, that's going to be your alternative pump killer if you decide to run Ice Golem and poison in this deck. So again, guys, cycle those other cards in the back. That's probably what I would do, or hang tight and then play defense. Now, why do you use arrows and zap in this deck? Well, as I mentioned earlier, you could totally use poison, and honestly, I would almost feel more comfortable using poison, but the reason that Pompeyo uses arrows and zap in this deck is arrows are kind of like a first line of defense against swarm units, so when they use those minions or the minion horde to counter your balloon, which is, you know, pretty likely what they'll do, oftentimes, you got those arrows, and then if they put bats or Goblin Gang or whatever out right after, then you have zap to counter that as well. So, on top of that, your P.E.K.K.A gets distracted by pesky little swarmy units like the Goblin Gang right there. So you have that zap and those arrows both to counter all those swarm units. So arrows is kind of your first line of defense, whereas zap is your second line of defense. Zap can also cause the towers to retarget off of your balloon. So if an opposing tower is on your balloon, and then something else gets a little bit closer than your balloon, like your P.E.K.K.A, maybe your balloon got distracted and then P.E.K.K.A didn't, or maybe your minions flew in closer to the tower, you can zap the opposing tower, and that'll cause it to retarget off of your balloon and target back onto whatever the closest unit is, getting off of your balloon, because you do want that balloon to connect. That's your major win condition in this deck. Alright guys, if you're playing this deck on ladder and you're above 4K, the new overtime is definitely going to be great for you. This is a control deck, so it gives you more time to control the match. So I'm playing this deck in challenges, as you can see. That's why everything's at tournament standard level. So I already have that 3-minute overtime, and it works to your advantage again because this is a control deck. You want to kind of control the board, play very defensively, go for effective counter pushes, and then kind of win over time when you gain a good opportunity to do so. So that 3-minute overtime, don't be afraid to use it. Don't be afraid to go 2.5 minutes into overtime, or even play out a draw if you absolutely have to. But ideally, you'll either chip away at them or find that perfect opportunity to break through with the balloon or the P.E.K.K.A, and then bam, their tower's dead. Alright guys, so more things about this being a control deck. It's mostly defensive, especially in single elixir time. So in single elixir time, you don't want to try too hard to win. You can put pressure on with the balloon if you want to. The balloon miner is a pretty deadly combo because the miner tanks for it. But generally, you want to use your cards defensively. You got Royal Ghost on defense, you got Inferno Dragon on defense, you got P.E.K.K.A, you got minions, all really good defensive cards. Even the miner, as you saw there, can be used on defense. You can use like a knight or something in front of the tower to distract an oncoming bandit dash. So play defense in single elixir generally, but then take good opportunities to go on offense. If you get a massive positive elixir trade, and you've got a P.E.K.K.A waltzing down the lane, then you don't have to just let it die. Like, you know, take advantage of that elixir trade, send in the zap to counter the skeleton army or whatever they put down to counter your P.E.K.K.A, right? So take advantage of those positive elixir trades, go on offense when possible. As you can see there, I was able to provide a pretty solid counter push there, and the balloon connected to the tower once, did an insane amount of damage, and the death damage finished off those 3 musketeers too. That was pretty entertaining. Alright, so take good opportunities to go on offense after you have played heavy defense. You can play more aggressively only in double elixir time, so once you get that double elixir going, then feel free to use your P.E.K.K.A at the bridge, or maybe build up a big snowball. You don't have to play as kind of defensively as you would have beforehand. Now, if they don't have a counter, you can balloon early. And you'll see me do that in a lot of these matches, or you will have seen me do that already at this point. Sometimes I'll send in the balloon even in single elixir time if I'm either trying to apply pressure, or if I know that they don't have a counter in hand or a really good counter at all in that deck for the balloon. And lastly, guys, don't be afraid to make personal preference substitutions. So you can always switch out cards in every deck based on what you like and what you enjoy, your personal playstyle. I've said them numerous times in this video already. I feel like Poison would fit out. It would fit really well in this deck, and honestly, if I continue to play it, I'll probably put Poison in the place of the arrows. I don't really like arrows. I've never really liked arrows. They're a good card. They're just not a preference for me. I've always really liked that, like, one medium spell, one light spell combo, you know, like the Fireball Zap, or like the Poison Log. You know, occasionally I like playing with Rocket or Lightning, don't get me wrong, but even then I'll still have like a light spell in there. So that arrows kind of falls into this weird medium 1.5 power level spell slot, and I'm not too big of a fan of it. So, you know, make substitutions that work for you, alright? Whatever your preference is. Like Royal Ghost, honestly, you could probably switch that out with a lot of things. You could put Dark Prince in there, as I mentioned earlier. That seems like a really flexible spot, especially since you just got nerfed recently. Alright guys, for this last match here, I'm just going to kind of show you this fun little Sparky match that I had. It's a little bit of a mismatch because some of his cards are underleveled, even on tournament standard level. Maybe he hasn't invested into them yet, but either way, it's kind of a fun little example of this deck here. You can see that I had that opportunity. I knew he was going for the Sparky beatdown push, so I aggressively ballooned in the right lane and paid off. Completely got that right tower. And of course, I have to counter out Sparky, so there you go. You got the P.E.K.K.A on defense, heavy defense. See, his bats are only level 8, so they're one level lower, not a big deal for him. But his giant is only level 6, so that makes a pretty big difference. Rascals are only level 8. So not exactly the fairest fight, but again, it works out pretty well, and it does a good example of kind of showing us how this deck works. So that P.E.K.K.A is definitely a heavy counter to Sparky, so if you do run into a Sparky deck, you can always use the P.E.K.K.A on top of their Sparky, and it'll just absolutely wreck them, and it'll tank, yeah, the big hit from the Sparky. So you can see what happened there. I saw that he aggressively ballooned, so I used mine as well on top of the P.E.K.K.A to try to go for the 3-crown victory and just give him that one tower there. He used the zap kind of as a last resort to try to defend against my balloon, make sure it didn't get one more auto attack there. I'm okay taking that little bit of damage because look at how low I have his king tower at this point. I can just smell the 3-crown victory with my big nose, right? I'm like, alright guys, I'm gonna get this 3 crown, I'm gonna get that crown chest unlocked, and I'm gonna continue on with this challenge and get some, you know, more fairly matched opponents. So I use the P.E.K.K.A in the back. I decide what I'm gonna do here is go for kind of a big snowball beatdown push. So I start with the P.E.K.K.A all the way in the back, and I'm gonna try to support her like crazy, and then kind of catch him off guard, and maybe sneak in a balloon or something like that when I can. Now what's happening here is everything's locked onto the P.E.K.K.A, so I can use the Inferno Dragon a little bit more safely. And then I put the Royal Ghost in the right there to take out the bandit girls, or the rascal girls. I always call them bandit girls because they look like bandits. And then I misplaced my miner there. I meant to use my balloon there. But either way, miner goes ahead and smacks on that giant, and all I need is the Royal Ghost to go ahead and continue onto the tower and finish it off. Alright guys, that is it for Pompeyo's P.E.K.K.A balloon deck. I absolutely love this deck. I just need to learn how to play it a little bit better. It takes some practice. Take it from yours truly. It's not a really easy deck to play. Control has a weird spot in the meta right now. It's not super popular. It's not super great, but as proven by one of the best players in the world, it definitely still has its place, and it has potential to do really well. Alright guys, am I going to point the right way? Yeah, hit the little burger down there to subscribe if you haven't already. Make sure that you leave comments in the comment section below, because I love responding to comments. So far, I'm able to respond to all of them at the moment. So get yours in there, maybe I'll feature it. Anything else? Share the video. What other stereotypical YouTuber crud can I say? Thanks so much for watching, guys. Have a good night.